hi, Dan. Just a couple of words about Dan. Dan is the Group Innovation Director of the BSI. And we met Dan back in 2018, I think it was December. And Dan was returning from Shanghai, China. And he told us he met Branimir there, and he said that they were looking into what blockchain technologies could do in order to complement BSI's solution. And Branimir, according to Dan's words, was disarming with his charm. But I'm sure Branimir is not only disarming with his charm, but also with his technical knowledge. So now, perhaps without further ado, I would leave it to Dan and then Jurij Škornik to present us with the results of this in the previous years of working with BSI.
Thank you, Žiga. Just a sound check. How do you hear me?
Very well.
And you can see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
All right, great. Thanks, Žiga. And yeah, in this next session, we're going to be bouncing. Jurij and I will kind of pass the baton back and forth. But just good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to meet you. As Žiga said, I'm Dan Purtell. I lead innovation for British Standards Institution, and while innovation is a rather new role for me, call it past 24 months or so. Prior to that, I worked 30 years in the supply chain, specifically supply chain security, and doing predictive modeling across the globe. And that's where I happened to bounce into Branimir on one of my many trips over to China. So that was a very good bump in. So I'm very happy to help kick off this event, the Liftoff event, and kind of tell our story. We're going to be talking about different instruments of trust in supply chain, something that's very near and dear. And just to say, it's been a very good strategic partnership with Origin Trail, Trace Labs, and really like working with the men and women over there. And we've got several things in motion, several products launched, several more planned. So really, I think what we're doing with our co-innovation, as I would call it here, is creating new client products and new client value, and really disproving false claims that we see that are prevalent throughout the global supply chain. And we work with both, call it open, Hyperledger technology, as well as permissioned and closed. And we're actually going to show one that is actually a permission system. So with that, I'll get into the presentation itself, and just a little bit of background about BSI, British Standards Institution. We're celebrating our 120th year birthday next year. Obviously based in the UK, but we have offices in 56 countries, and we are helping shape and embed best practice through the creation of standards and the certification against standards around the globe. We help companies further with supply chain resiliency, predictive modeling, compliance programs. But what we're also very busy with is obviously our assessment work in certification. Each year we perform just short of 300,000 assessments, typically on-site assessments, which has been a real challenge with COVID. But we've got some good work that we're doing in the immersive technology space. And so with that, we're basically flat year over year, very happy to say, with 2019. So a great year for innovation and to innovate in this global pandemic. We also conduct about 100,000 consulting days each year around environmental health and services, as well as supply chain. And we know that one of the top client challenges that we hear from our key accounts and our more than 85,000 clients is very common themes of traceability, authenticity. How do we trust a supplier? How do we trust a factory? How do we trust a person? And we can, I think, using blockchain technology, go ahead and bring those instruments of trust to those different technologies. And I would also say that extends to products. So BSI, we've been working with Origin Trail now a few years, following this meeting, and you'll see a couple of those work products within this presentation. So from an innovation perspective, what we're trying to do, again, is bring new client value, but really around our clients' either stated or unstated challenges that they have as it relates to trust and resiliency. And what I would say that we have created is, when Jurij goes over the scan use case, is a good instrument of trust. How do we know that this factory has actually been certified by us, been audited to us, has had the remediation and corrective actions in place, and that we should go ahead and procure, make purchase orders with this stated factory. And so an instrument of trust is definitely something that I believe blockchain technology actually helps us do, using the Origin Trail protocol. And the solutions that we've created absolutely do that. And I'm sure our clients would say the same. I know Scan is very happy with some of the work that we've done, as is some of the other solutions that we've created. So in terms of our focus areas within innovation, really what we're trying to do is provide solutions for Industry 4.0, factory of the future, through digital assurance products and solutions, which blockchain services is absolutely key and in the center of. So what we're trying to do, like shaping standards, is we're trying to create the next generation of consultancy, product certification, as well as delivering higher levels of trust and continuous assessment in this space. 5 years ago, we would show up to a site once a year. We would conduct an audit, and we would get a good snapshot in time of what that factory looked like at that point in time. We would certify that factory if they met all of the criteria, provide them a certificate. But what we're seeing is a lot of fraud in this area. It extends both to entity level certifications as well as some of the product certifications that we do. And a good example of that would be a CE mark on a product. And how do you know that that is really an authentic CE mark? And I think what we have, call it within the world, within global supply chain, is a growing deficit of trust. How do we trust this person? How do we trust this product? And it extends to consumer trust as well. It's the consumer in the end that suffers from it, that possibly gets price gouged to buy an N95 mask, as the Origin Trail guys and I have discussed many times. Is we're starting to see different issues, different threats, different risks emerge within the global supply chain, where blockchain technology, the Origin Trail protocol, could be a good solution to that. So we've worked hard also this year from an augmented reality, continuous assessment, and immersive perspective, from a digital assurance perspective. Instead of sending one of our client manager men or women around the world, we would send technology, and we would conduct that certification audit using different remote technology. And I think this helps get us into remote and predictive analytics, of which that we've got a secure data lake services, which again, we could tokenize using blockchain technology. And you can see that we are playing in just about all things disruptive technology. It's a quickly evolving and shaping world. It's actually a lot of fun to do it. You got to stay up on it, like learning a new language. It seems like every month, because the speed and pace at which just we are being, disrupted and innovated is lightning fast. But it's a lot of fun working too. So in terms of verified digital trust systems, really the scan use case came from a DHS, a Department of Homeland Security, open solicitation call, where they were looking for using blockchain technology as different instruments of trust within global supply chains. And what I saw a lot of, we were one of the 15 finalists, Scan, BSI, in Origin Trail, was a lot of the what, products that were entering the supply chain, and different duty classification, duty that was due, harmonized goods classification. So, we can actually, blockchain a tuna fish, but we know very little about that person that's on the boat that's actually harvesting that. And are they socially compliant? We know a lot about the sweater that's entering the supply chain, but we don't know much about the sweater factory that's doing it from a security perspective. And where I cut my teeth in supply chain, I'm a supply chain security professional. I've consulted with Homeland Security and the State Department and a lot of other agencies in the U.S. and abroad from a supply chain security perspective. And what we primarily were doing was making sure bad things or bad people weren't entering the supply chain in an unauthorized fashion, something we call unmanifested cargo or people introduction. And so that really starts around the who's actually manufacturing, who's actually stuffing that container, and what that chain of custody looks like. And we're using this verifiable data registry to go ahead and serve as really a backdrop for what we're doing. Now, they were big into preventing forgery, counterfeiting certificates, and licenses. And those certificates come in the way of a SCAN certification. With SCAN, what we do is we audit a factory to CTPAT criteria, which is the U.S. Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. And CTPAT will certify my former company that I came from, Intel Corporation. And in turn, what I need to do is I need to certify all of my supply chain partners, transportation and logistics partners, as well as the factories or the material companies that we're actually procuring goods from. So we certify them, we make sure that they're compliant with the criteria, and in turn, Homeland Security would certify us. So it's a force multiplier, and it affects millions of factories around the world. And what was happening is people knew that if they had a SCAN certificate in a SCAN audit, that purchase orders were likely going to come their way because they're a trusted partner. And what we had, similar to some of the challenges that we saw within CE this year, is people making false claims, actually, doing some Adobe work and creating a falsified certification, which we have a copy of here. And so with that, we knew blockchain technology wouldn't require an investigation to see if this factory was really certified, that we could immediately identify it, and that's exactly what we did there. In May this year, we launched our second edition of our Innovation Insights paper, Instruments of Trust, BSI's Blockchain Solutions. And this will show some other use cases that we don't have the time to really talk about today. It includes different standards that people purchase to see if in fact that licensed and copyrighted version belongs to that stated owner, because what we see are a lot of copyright violations or sharing of copyrighted material, within the global supply chain. So we can actually demonstrate that. And another use case is actually applying for training certifications. Each year, we conduct more than 250,000 certifications, or certifying people to, as an example, being a lead ISO quality management system auditor. This is a credential that is very important to people that work in the ISO and the quality management space. So what we've done is we've blockchained that. We turned that blockchain hash into a QR code, something that they can post on LinkedIn. And we got a high level of interest by our students that we certify with this. So again, another good use of the technology, and something that we're going to continue to move throughout the different organizations. So teeing up the SCAN Association, what SCAN is, it is an association primarily of large retailers with about $1.5 trillion of purchasing power each year. And these are within the United States, and it does extend to some parts of the European Union. These are the largest retailers in the world, the biggest manufacturers, the biggest procurers of different goods, and really big use of the supply chain. So, we have Target as our chairperson. Target, I believe, is the #3 importer into the United States in terms of gross number of containers as well as value. Walmart's in here, Home Depot, Lowe's, JCPenney. Really, it's the who's who in terms of retailer in the United States. Now, this association was formed back in 2015, and it's a not-for-profit, but we compete on the shelves, we sell like products, but we don't compete in terms of supply chain security. And so with supply chain security, there is certain minimum security criteria with CTPAT and in the European Union, authorized economic operator, that has to be complied with. And so we will conduct an audit, and everybody that uses that factory will then in turn be shared a blockchained copy of that audit report. But prior to this use case, they weren't blockchain. They were simply stored in one of our software systems. And as a result of that, this is where we had people making these false claims. So it's about 55 full members. We have about 20,000 factories that we've blockchained and we've incorporated in there. It's truly global in nature. It's 74 countries. We write corrective actions. We've had about 130,000 corrective actions. And with this, how this actually works is we have 7 different audit bodies, the certified auditors, that will conduct the audits. This goes into a BSI solution that we have called Supplier Compliance Manager, where we will store and house that. We'll dashboard that audit report. We will apply some of the risk intelligence that our company has around different proprietary indicators associated with the supply chain, 3 primarily: anti-Western terrorism, unmanifested cargo disruption, and then hijacking exposure where contraband can be introduced into the supply chain. And so we then push this into a scan repository, which the origin trail protocol grabs it, and we blockchain 10 different components associated with that factory. And these components are the key components necessary to supply to different governments around the world in order to ensure that you have an authorized import coming in. We convert that into a QR code, so there's easy reference to this. This is a permissioned database, meaning you have to be a member or a government that is approved by the SCAN Association in order to have view rights. And this is what we're doing to combat the fraud that we've seen within factories falsely claiming to have a certificate. But at this point, what I'd like to do is pass it over to my counterpart, Jurij, who will actually run through what the interface looks like. It's a good-looking interface. We get a lot of positive feedback on that. So Jurij, if you're available, you can take over the screen. I can stop sharing, and you can go ahead and show what this interface looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dan. That was a very good introduction. Also makes my job a lot easier going through the demo. So just before we actually hop into how the report looks like, Dan mentioned when these shared kind of factory audits are issued, that key data points are actually secured on the origin trail decentralized network, and then they're enabled for verification either to SCAN members on one hand, or on the other hand, authorized government agencies such as the Customs and Border Protection CTPAT program. Now, we saw on Dan's previous slide, there was a little QR code on the bottom of the report. So when a SCAN authorized member or a government agency would scan the QR code and verify that they have access, for example, this is what they would see. So this is now a sample audit report that was secured on the origin trail decentralized network. And how it works, it usually takes some time to load because it's reading directly from the ODN node. But what do the SCAN members or authorized government agencies see? They can see who the security audit was made for, done for whom, and by which audit company, what is the current status of the report. And of course, they can see then the meat of the report, which is really the key indicators, key audit indicators and scores in terms of different security categories. So they can see what the overall score is. They can see how that particular factory actually scored in different security categories, and how it actually performed. So there's a benchmark how it performs compared to an average. For example, in this case will be China, or they can check globally how that particular factory performs as compared to other aggregate average of other factories. And these are kind of the key risk indicators that they can look at. And here they can also see the geographic risk overview. This is what Dan also touched upon briefly before, that is coming from Screen. This is a solution from BSI that focuses really on kind of providing that visibility on on supply chains, essentially, that is related to where the factory lies. So in this case, for example, is China. We can see there is an assessment around the supply chain terrorism and unmanifested cargo introduction. So the the interface provides a bit of a broader context than just simply the audit points. Of course, there are some information. There's some information around the audited company information. In this case, this is Tracelabs. This is a dummy audit, and you can see how many years have been in business, employee number, and some other details. Now, for users, it's very easy also to actually just generate a very high level overview on a simple kind of consolidated PDF, which they can then download and share. Of course, they can also see the progress, the life cycle of this audit. So this particular audit only has one version, but if there were multiple versions before, the corrective actions were assigned, and after the corrective actions were assigned, and the audit passed, this is where they could actually see how they scored before they performed those corrective actions. And last but not least, the users, so either SCAN members or government agencies, can actually verify. So I'm going to run this. That's the certificates. So the audits are actually authentic. They've been issued by BSI. They've been secured and replicated on the origin trail decentralized network, fingerprinted on the Ethereum blockchain, and that the audit, of course, also hasn't been revoked. And at the end, they get a conclusion saying this audit is valid, and they have that ability to also check that transaction on either Etherscan or origin trail decentralized network, which, for the purpose of time, I won't let run the query on the testnet right now. So that's how it looks like. This is how the actual production system also feels. And I'll hand over to you, Dan, for the second section.
Very good, thank you, Jurij. We're very pleased with how. Sorry, just pulling this up, doing two things at once. Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen again. All right, awesome, thanks. Yeah, we're very pleased with the way it turned out and it looks. And really, I would call it phase 2 and phase 3 of what the SCAN blockchain solution is going to look like. Is we're going to tie it with other ecosystems. One of the ecosystems that we're going to tie it to is there's about 850 certified auditors around the world. But if Jurij is doing a certification audit on a factory in China, how do we know that Jurij is actually certified? So we're blockchaining training results and training certifications that we have. And then we can reconcile that Jurij is an authorized auditor doing that. This is a requirement by Homeland Security that you have to have this. So we're using blockchain technology to actually further that use case. And then it's tethering it to the different authorized customs agencies around the world. So these will be CTPAT, European Union AEO, and other mutually recognized governments. It will be the first of its kind. Quite frankly, it creates value. It creates instant credentialing and trust mechanisms for our clients. But I think more importantly, what it does is nobody else is doing this, and it's really going to cause massive growth within this association, which is one of their overall objectives. So moving forward, there we've got the demo out of the way. I just wanted to talk about another couple of use cases that incorporate supply chain, and this one is with a really cool company that's owned by somebody famous, which I can't disclose, sorry. But Drev, it's out of Ireland, and it's a startup distillery. And really, what they want to do is they want to blockchain basically from grain to glass, and with that, have identification markers on those bottles that actually go ahead and show the authenticity of that, all the way down to very detailed information around the distilling process, the bottling, the casking of that, and what it actually stood in. So it covers these 5 different areas of the supply chain, from the farming to the grain. They're very particular about the grain that they're using for this particular whiskey, the malting process, distilling, filling the cast with that, bottling and maturation. So with that, there's been some other services that we've provided with this. We have something called a kite mark, which is a mark of trust, showing that it's been certified to different food safety and food security standards, and that you can actually trust that. When we put our kite mark, which on a product, which is a little heart with a BSI and a verification in it, typically the net sales of that product grows by about 20%. So there's a lot of value in that. It is a super brand emblem around the world. And so what we're doing is we're bringing further trust to this process through the use of blockchain technology and working with Origin Trail. So there is a consumer interface component to that. So with that, there is a mobile interface where again the consumer can actually scan that product, which covers the grain, malting, distillery, maturation, bottling process. There's a validation using blockchain technology to ensure that that is actually a valid product, which then further extends to our BSI kite mark. So again, this was kind of the first of its kind. We went public with this, which is why I'm able to share it, but not share everything with that. I hope you appreciate that. But we do have other doors starting to open already with that. Some very, very predominant whiskey manufacturers, distilleries in Scotland have approached us. A wine manufacturer has too. And I will say that, I've attended different food conferences around the world, and, I'm looking to see what technology's out there. And while I always thought, quite frankly, that food was from a blockchain perspective was a bit saturated. There were a lot of players in it. Some of our competitors were offering the service, but obviously people want to understand the provenance as well as the chain of custody associated with food. We are very well known, not only in food, it is one of our major sectors, but from a medical device perspective, pharmaceutical, automotive, in aerospace. And in my opinion, it's also a high risk area. What's going in my body, what's going into a plane, we want to guarantee the authenticity of it, the chain of custody. And so these are areas, these are sectors where we've got probably a dominant market position in. And so we're also not only looking at food, we're just call it tripping across, and people are approaching us on it, but also using this technology to go ahead and provide instruments of trust for things that really matter. We do have counterfeit products going into planes. We've got the World Health Organization claiming that about 20% of the pharmaceutical goods around the world are counterfeit. And we've got some very exciting things that we're working on with Origin Trail in these respective areas that really, I think, are very promising. They're desperately needed, and they're going to further bring trust to the supply chain. So with that, what we're trying to do from a supply chain perspective is obviously increase transparency. As I say, trust is transparency and transparency is trust. Blockchain technology gives us that capability of showing the transparency of a product, of a person, or of an entity. And so those are the three things that we're really focused on, is bringing trust to each of these different components within the supply chain. Traceability, provenance, and being able to show that point of origin is absolutely key. And me working in about 110 countries the past 30 years, being a supply chain security consultant, and what I've seen, I know this silver bullet is really, really tough to manufacture. And it's commonly questioned, and I think rightly so, because there's a lot of ways that you can actually disrupt that. So coming up with some foolproof technology, which we're working on, to actually guarantee the traceability and the provenance of something is absolutely key. Chain of custody is the third area that we're really trying to do. And we've actually, with Origin Trail, recently won an Innovate UK award for something called Trust Bytes, BYTES, a little play on words there. It does involve food and produce specifically, but really showing the chain of custody, the temperature control integrity of different food products in the supply chain from origin to destination. And this has got good applicability because this is one of the major client challenges that we're trying to tackle, is understanding provenance as well as chain of custody. And again, I don't think there's any silver bullets out there, but we've got a very robust supply chain consulting group with several supply chain products, and understanding where those risks are. And chain of custody is one that we're really trying to tackle here. And lastly, anti-counterfeiting technology. And this gets down to consumer trust. This is one of our other top 5 business challenges that we're trying to tackle, is how do we provide the consumer a trusted product that they're buying, ensuring that they're not getting gouged, ensuring that it's in the right market of destination, because there's different specifications with products that it's intended for, and that if you're putting an N95 mask on, that it's absolutely an authentic N95 mask. We have to increase trust. And so this is where I think really from a BSI perspective, blockchain technology is enabling us from being a business to business to a B2B to C, business to business to consumer. We really want to get that consumer aspect, provide more value there, provide more instruments of trust and resiliency. Blockchain technology is enabling it. So I think the roadmap for blockchain technology is very exciting. It's got absolute application within the supply chain in the areas that the BSI is actually working on. And and so I'm excited. I'm excited about what the future holds. I'm excited about continuing to establish and develop some of these products and solutions that we've been working hard on with Origin Trail. And I guess just in conclusion, here's my contact details. I'd like to wish everybody a safe holiday with your family, and I don't know about you, but we're looking forward to putting 2020 behind us and really ramping up with 2021. And just to extend my sincere thanks to the men and women at Origin Trail, because you guys really help us make a difference, and very happy with everything. And we appreciate the opportunity to help you kick off your Liftoff event. So thank you. And with that, Žiga, I'll pass it back over to you so we can get on to our next speaker.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. That was a very cool introduction and overview. It's always a pleasure hearing you speak. Same to you, of course, always very good. I feel like we've had a very good cooperation over the last 2 years, and looking forward to seeing how we can use now the Origin Trail decentralized knowledge graph to tackle each of those areas that you've gone through. So an exciting 2021. Thanks again.